I'm Sergeant Jake Monroe, and this is the story I never thought I'd tell. I'm 36 years old, stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas, and I've been in the Army for almost 16 years. I joined right after high school because I wanted to make something of myself, and because where I come from, the uniform still meant something. Back then, I believed in the system. I believed if you worked hard, stayed squared away, and didn't stir the pot, things would work out. I believed leadership had your back, that if you did your part, they'd do theirs. For a long time, that seemed to be true. I started out in logistics. Not glamorous, but vital. Making sure the right gear got to the right people at the right time. I was good at it. Efficient, organized, always the guy who could track down a missing part faster than supply ever could. Over the years, I became the one younger soldiers came to when they were confused. I wasn't flashy, but I was steady. It wasn't until last year that things started to shift, not all at once, more like a slow drip, the kind of change you don't notice until it's already soaked through everything. It started with a conversation in the hallway outside the motor pool. My CO at the time, Captain Rollins, stopped me and said he had an opportunity. His exact words were, "Jake, you're the kind of guy who gets things done. I want you acting as logistics officer on the next rotation." I remember feeling proud. Like finally, someone saw what I'd been doing all this time. But it wasn't an official promotion. No paperwork. No bump in pay. Just a verbal nod and a whole new stack of responsibilities. I should have asked more questions. I should have paid attention to the way he avoided eye contact when I said, "What's the catch?" But I didn't. I just said, "Yes, that's what you do, right? You step up, especially when you're told it's a test of your leadership potential." Only it wasn't a test, not really. It was the start of something I didn't see coming. And once it started, there was no going back. A week after that hallway talk, Rollins called me into his office. He closed the door behind me and said it with a kind of casual gravity that made it sound like good news. He said he'd talked to battalion, said they needed someone sharp to step in short term, help run logistics at a higher level while the unit prepped for a major inspection. He used the word interim about 4 times, like that was supposed to make it feel temporary. Then he dropped the title, Acting Logistics Officer. No orders, no memo, just a handshake and a clipboard. When I asked about pay, he brushed it off. Said the paperwork takes time, but opportunities like this don't come around often. It didn't sit right. I'd seen stuff like this before, soldiers carrying weight they never officially got credit for. But part of me still wanted to believe this was different. I asked if there'd be a formal evaluation tied to it. He smiled and said, "Play your cards right and it'll speak for itself." For the first few days, I told myself this was fine, that it was a stepping stone, a test. I took it seriously, stepped up like I always did, took over convoy manifests, requisition planning, even briefed a few visiting officers. I was doing the job, but then I started noticing the cracks. Things I'd never had to deal with before. Policy compliance, asset loss reports. 2 young privates got into a rollover on a night run, and I was the name on the accountability form. When I flagged it to Rollins, he shrugged and said, "That's part of the role. You've got it handled." But I didn't. Not officially. I didn't have command authority. I couldn't issue orders or sign off on major equipment moves, but I was being treated like I could. Worse, I was being held responsible when things went sideways. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just working without extra pay. I was exposed. No rank increase meant no legal cover. If someone got hurt, or equipment vanished, or protocol got skipped under pressure, it was on me. And no one upstairs was going to take the fall. They'd just point to the guy who'd stepped up without asking enough questions. It wasn't just unfair. It was dangerous. I started losing sleep. Every late delivery made my chest tighten. Every missed deadline felt like a landmine waiting to go off. My buddies thought I was moving up. They didn't see the trap. The responsibility was real. The title was fake. And I was stuck in the middle, holding the line for a command that saw me as a convenient buffer. Looking back, that was the moment I stopped trusting the system. Not because I hated it, but because I realized it didn't care if it crushed you, as long as someone else got promoted in the process. The first time I heard Rollins repeat my logistics plan during a battalion meeting and take credit for it like it was his own, I let it slide. I figured maybe he just forgot to mention my name, but by the third time, I knew exactly what was happening. He was cherry-picking everything that worked, dressing it up, and feeding it upstairs like it was his brilliance. Meanwhile, any delay, any hiccup, any mix-up on the ground landed squarely on my shoulders. He didn't even pretend to have my back. When one of our transport convoys got held up at a refuel point, it was me who got pulled into his office for a dressing down. I wanted to believe I could fix it by just working harder. So I did. I stayed late, skipped meals, took calls at 0200 because someone couldn't find the inventory key. I kept my head down, hoping someone would notice the cracks weren't mine. But the cracks got wider. Then one of my guys collapsed during a prep drill. Kid was barely 20, hadn't eaten in 12 hours, running on fumes and bad chow. I carried him to the medic station myself. Rollins didn't even ask what happened. He just said, "Next time, keep the schedule on track." That moment flipped a switch in me. I wasn't just being overlooked, I was being used. They were burning us down to meet metrics, and when something broke, I was the one expected to apologize for it. I was the safety net they could blame, and I realized it was never going to stop. 2 days after that, I got a reprimand in my inbox, official letterhead. Said I'd failed to report vehicle maintenance delays. Thing is, I did report it. I emailed Rollins the minute I found out, but there was no record of it in the system. He deleted the chain. Just like that, I went from the guy holding the line to the guy holding the bag. I sat in the motor pool that night, just staring at that message. Not mad anymore, just hollow. The kind of hollow you feel when you know the people above you don't just fail to protect you. They're the ones pulling the strings that cut you down. And that's when I knew I couldn't outwork this. I had to outsmart it. I started the spreadsheet on a Sunday night, long after lights out. I sat alone at my desk in the barracks, staring at a blank Excel file, feeling like I was doing something illegal. Every cell I filled felt like a quiet act of war. At first, it was just the hours, date, shift length, tasks assigned. Then I added a column for duty orders, who gave them, whether they were verbal or written. The patterns started forming fast. Long days with no paperwork, double shifts on weekends, reassigned missions that came through Rollins but were logged under my name. I hid the file behind a fake folder, labeled Vehicle Parts Request 2023. It was the kind of thing no one looked twice at in our line of work. Every time I updated it, I saved a backup to a private drive, labeled with just a number, no names, no keywords, just quiet proof. But the spreadsheet wasn't enough. I needed voices. I needed words said out loud and in context. So, I planned the next step, knowing full well it could bury me. I charged my old phone, disabled notifications, and wrapped it in a folded notepad. I slid it into my uniform's chest pocket so the mic pointed out. The next morning, Rollins called an impromptu sync in the admin room. 4 of us. Concrete walls. No windows. Phones technically weren't allowed, but enforcement was spotty. Still, I'd seen soldiers lose rank for less. My heart was thudding like a drum line. I tried to breathe evenly, but I was sweating through my undershirt before we even sat down. Rollins launched into one of his usual briefs. Shuffling taskings, reassigning inventory checks, brushing off late shipments like they were our fault. Then he said the thing I needed. That extra convoy last week, count it under Monroe. He's the acting lead. My spine stiffened. It was the 4th time he pushed blame for his decisions down the ladder. I didn't say a word, just sat still, barely nodding. All I could think was, please don't hear it buzz. Please don't ask for notes. When the meeting ended, I waited for them to leave, kept fiddling with papers until I could slip out unnoticed. Back at my room, I played it back with headphones on, volume low. His voice came through, sharp and clean. He said my name. He said the role. I saved the file twice, labeled it under the same fake folder, and tucked the phone into a locked drawer. I didn't sleep much that night, not from fear but from adrenaline. I wasn't scared anymore. I was calculating. Every risk had to count. Because I finally understood I wasn't just being overlooked, I was being set up. And if no one else was going to protect me, I'd do it myself, one line, one file, one whispered recording at a time. The bass went quiet before anyone said a word. That kind of silence only hits when something big is about to break. It was a Tuesday, just after chow, when someone whispered it outside the motor pool. CID's here. The words moved like current through steel. No alarms, no sirens, just an invisible shift in how everyone stood. Soldiers stopped mid-task, looked over shoulders. A few NCOs started talking softer. Eyes tracked doorways like they expected someone to walk in and start calling names. I didn't say anything, just kept my head down, hands moving slow through a stack of parts inventory. But my chest was tight. This was real. Someone had picked up the thread, and now they were pulling. By noon, the atmosphere was paper thin. Even the jokers in the barracks had gone silent. CID wasn't loud. They didn't storm in. They didn't flash badges or bark orders. They walked calm, clipboard in hand, speaking just above a whisper, asking to talk one by one. First, it was Captain Torres, then Private Ellis, then a specialist from Fuel Depot. No one knew who'd be next. No one wanted to be seen reacting. When they called my name, I already knew. I followed one of them through a quiet hallway, back to a room near command. No windows, just 2 chairs and a table. The agent was polite, no threats, no accusations. Just wanted me to walk through my duties, my title, who gave orders, who signed off. I answered everything straight. I didn't volunteer emotion. I just gave them what I'd lived. Then I slid my folder across the table. Hours logged, task lists, the audio transcript. It was like passing off a weight I'd carried for months. The agent nodded. She didn't say much, but I didn't need her to. Just seeing her flip through those pages, giving them more attention in 10 minutes than HR had in 10 weeks, told me I wasn't alone anymore. Outside, the air felt heavier. But for once, it wasn't just me feeling it. The whole company knew something was coming. What none of us could say yet was how deep it had cut or how far up it would reach. But the silence had cracked, and nothing would be quiet again. CID didn't leave after day 1. They came back. Again. And again. Never the same faces. Never the same time. Just long coats, no rank displayed, clipboards in hand, moving through the buildings like they already knew the layout. They didn't call it an investigation out loud. They didn't need to. Everyone on base knew what it was. The way files started disappearing from desks, the way sergeants stopped barking orders and started whispering behind closed doors, the way command staff suddenly had nothing to say in morning briefs. They came to me again, asked for everything. I gave them the updated spreadsheet, task logs, backup drives, photos of whiteboards from shift planning, a printed transcript of that audio I'd recorded with Rollins' voice assigning me leadership on paperless duty. I watched them leaf through it all with eyes like machines. They didn't blink, didn't nod, didn't react, but they took it all. Then came the interviews, not in groups, one by one, private room. Every soldier, every NCO, every tech and driver and operator that had even brushed up against Rollins' supply line. I could see the shift in people, shoulders tighter, eyes lower, no jokes at chow, no music in the motor pool. No one wanted to be next, but we all knew we would be. Word spread fast that they were pulling records too. Leave slips, duty rosters, pay logs, every time card, every shift schedule. They went into the admin system like they had keys made from the inside. And every day, someone looked just a little paler than they had the day before. Rollins vanished from view. He stopped showing up for briefing. No check-ins, no site visits, no walkthroughs. His office blinds stayed shut. His calendar cleared out. Someone said he was sick. Another said he was on temporary reassignment. But none of us bought that. Not with CID still here, still digging, still pulling thread after thread. Then it happened. I came in early one Friday, just past 0600, and his office was stripped. Nameplate gone. Shelves empty. Chair missing. Like he had been vacuumed out of the room. There wasn't a single trace he'd ever sat there, not even a post-it left behind. By noon, the bulletin board updated. Staff change notice. Effective immediately. Sergeant Major Rollins had been reassigned to an operations base in Alaska. No rank reduction, no write-up. Just moved like a piece on a board, away from the mess he helped make. The silence that followed was thick. No speeches, no acknowledgments. No one said his name, but we all knew. We felt it, like pressure had lifted from the entire unit. The schedule smoothed out. Deadlines loosened. People started sleeping again. It was like the base exhaled for the first time in months. I felt relief, but not the kind that made me smile. It was the quiet kind. The kind that still leaves a bruise. I'd been waiting for someone to step in, to say what happened was wrong, to fix it out loud. But the Army doesn't work that way. It protects itself first. Discipline comes without ceremony. And I understood that. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need his name dragged through mud. I just needed it to stop. For the work to be fair again. For no one else to get crushed by a title they didn't ask for. And that's what happened. Quietly, deliberately, without fanfare. That night, I walked past his old office and saw a stack of cleaning supplies where his desk used to be. Paper towels, mop heads, bleach. I didn't laugh. But something about it settled deep in me. Like maybe the system didn't say it loud, but it said enough. He was gone. And this time, he wasn't coming back. 3 weeks after Rollins disappeared, I got the call. It wasn't dramatic, just a short message from command asking me to report to the admin building at 0900. No explanation, no warning, just that quiet Army way of telling you something important's about to shift. Inside, it was the battalion XO and a civilian from finance. They handed me a folder. Inside was a breakdown of hours, retroactive duty logs, and a check for $14,263. No speech, no handshake, just a line from the XO saying the IG concluded the case and corrections were being processed. It was dry, efficient, but I felt something crack open in my chest anyway. It wasn't just the money, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't matter. What got me was the fact that someone, somewhere, had gone through every single shift I worked. Someone counted the hours, verified the duties, stamped approval that what happened to me wasn't okay. That meant more than the number on the check. 2 days later, I was called in again. This time, it was my company commander. He didn't sit behind the desk. He stood in front of it, file in hand, and said he'd reviewed my service record, performance during the investigation, and the feedback from CID. Then he looked me in the eye and said he wanted to recommend me for the next officer candidate school cycle. This time, not acting. Official. With paperwork, mentorship, and the full support of command. I didn't say yes right away. I just nodded and took the file home. But when I got back to the barracks, I sat on my bunk for a long time. Thought about everything. All the weekends missed. The weight I'd carried alone. The fear, the silence. And then, finally, the moment it all turned. When I walked past Rollins' old office that night, the light was on. The door was open. Inside, the walls were bare. His oak desk was gone. In its place was a stack of toilet paper, boxes of hand radios, and a mop bucket in the corner. It had become a glorified janitor's closet. Somehow, that felt right. Not petty, just poetic. He used that office to turn power into pressure. Now, it was holding the exact opposite. I stood there for a moment longer than I needed to, not gloating. Just remembering, I joined the Army because I believed in structure, in order, in people earning their place. That belief got shaken, bent pretty hard, but it didn't break. Because in the end, the system worked. Not perfectly, not quickly, but it did what it was supposed to do. I sent in my acceptance to OCS the next morning, And when I folded the uniform that night, I did it differently. It wasn't just a job again. It was a choice. A choice to keep going, to lead right, to stand for the guys who didn't know they could push back. I was just one name on one base in Texas, but sometimes that's where it starts.